if we will be looking at the $5 trillion, 0 cents inflow that could boost XRP's value throughout the day. There has been a substantial increase in global M2 levels, and another $5 trillion 0 cents is about to be pumped into the world economy. There are examples in the past that back up this claim, so you should take it seriously. Predicted big things for the cryptocurrency market, especially for XRP and other coins that can take advantage of this liquidity. Compared to their competitors, these well-established industry leaders stand to gain a lot more. Making sure everyone is ready for the next liquidity issue and what it can mean for the future is the goal of today's video. I will show you the important material first, and then we can go into the nitty-gritty of how this affects your XRP holdings. Use your best judgment if you so want. Being aware of the factors at work is essential for a successful market understanding because it is a factor in asset prices. Liquidity is something I always discuss in my videos if you've been watching them for any length of time. So liquidity needs to be watched carefully. Permit me to elaborate on my argument. It was in the last 3 months of 2024, just before Trump's inauguration, that we saw a decrease in liquidity. As a result of investors fleeing the market, asset values fell. On the other hand, we saw an uptick in liquidity in the first quarter of 2025, which was the start of the new fiscal year. As a subscriber to Michael Howell's newsletter, I will offer a link to his work so that you can use some of his charts. You can subscribe to this digital newspaper if you're interested. Since Michael has been on my show before, I will also provide a link to our interview. Fantastic job. But clearly, it's the year 2024. The world's cash on hand reached a record high of $175 trillion. 0 cents in September 2024. Our shift from 175 was completed by the end of 2024, with the score 173, 172, 171. Liquidity was logging out, leaving you to wonder, however, Mark, the quiz is nearing its conclusion. Starting in January 2025, we moved on to 171, then 172, 172, 173, 174, 174, and finally 176. At the end of the year, we will get back to this. The latter 6 to 8 weeks were already covered. That subject will be covered again. You are saying, but Mark, despite the fact that liquidity has increased since the price has been falling this year, and you claim that liquidity decreased last year, I'm not sure what to make of this. Despite this, you assert that liquidity is rising even as prices fall. I am really bewildered by the circumstance. As of last week, total global liquidity was $176 trillion, 0 cents, representing a positive rise of $5 trillion, 0 cents, as per Michael Hall, which is why the film is titled $5 trillion, 0 cents, Tsunami. Additionally, the entirety of the price rise, amounting to $5 trillion, 0 cents for the entire year, has been subtracted. This particular event occurs around 10 to 12 weeks apart, which helps to clarify the uncertainty surrounding the association. We saw the effects of the previous year's fourth quarter liquidity withdrawal in the first quarter. The biggest impact in 2025 will hit towards the quarter's conclusion because of the lag caused by the liquidity spike that happened in Q1 and is expected to happen again in Q2. This phenomenon is already starting to be noticed by us. One of the charts I'd like to show you is a breakdown of global equity from June of this year. Here are a few additional charts that Michael made in 2021. I have been using this chart here since then, especially leading up to the impending worldwide crisis of 2022, when everyone had to get out of the markets when they were at their lowest. If you've been keeping up with my work, you might know that I started making videos at this point. If you've noticed for a long time, then my channel deserves your attention. It is a good time to start buying things. As I said, the market is not going to crash anytime soon. Let me explain why I have decided to put money into new assets. I've seen that liquidity is at an all-time low, and the markets have been doing absolutely phenomenal recently. There has been a nonstop cycle of about 4 years since then. We had a string of successful ventures 4 years ago, and they were all linear with no variations. Our 4 years of success in a row are clearly visible. Permit me to zero in on the specifics now. Now think about this scenario. Liquidity decreased in the fourth quarter of 2024, as we had predicted. Nonetheless, it rose during Q1 of this year. All of this relates to the $5 trillion or 0 cents that will supposedly follow. We should look at this data to see if there are other ways of looking at this quarter's results. For better clarity, I'll zoom in a little. One way to measure the dollar's worth compared to other currencies is with the Dixie, which is also called the dollar index. A stronger dollar has been shown in this analysis that goes all the way back to 2019. At the same time as liquidity and asset prices were falling in 2020, there was a sharp upturn the following year, 2022. Liquidity and asset values increased as a result of the weakening currency. And this tendency is visible. These two extremes have been our oscillation points. Now that we're in Q1, let's take a look at the scenario. The last 3 months of last year will be the subject of my writing. The previous year's fourth quarter saw a depletion, which led to a subsequent fall in the first quarter of this year. Because of this, a flood of cash has come flooding in. For example, looking at Bitcoin shows that asset values are reflecting this trend. At the same time that the dollar index fell, Bitcoin also clearly fell in value, fell precipitously as the dollar index rose in the previous quarter, leading to less liquidity and a corresponding collapse in Bitcoin's value. Even though we can't see anything with our naked eyes, let's have a look at something that can be seen here. In my opinion, Bitcoin has lately gone through a major change similar to the last 2 days. Its increase is exact, 10-12% global. Liquidity greatly affects the value of any asset class. And it is true that XRP is similar to the global M2 supply in this regard. According to the person quoted, all it takes is 10 minutes of patience. If global liquidity is increased, your first investment will yield a profit within 12 weeks. Please pay close attention as he uses a number of charts and examples from real life to prove this phenomenon, especially as it relates to